Or 9:15 your time.
All right, hey, we're live. Arjun Alpha Unscripted. How's it going, Brock?
Excellent. Fired up, ready to talk.
Good. Our comrade Clint is on a business trip. He's actually in Phoenix here. He had a tight schedule, so he and I weren't connecting, or aren't able to connect. But he dropped me a text this morning how just loving the weather out here. Because right now you wake up, it's like 60 degrees. Yeah, I think it'd be like mid 80s today. And it's just, now until really kind of the early part of May, it's just different degrees of paradise. So.
That's pretty much the same thing in your Minnesota. So yeah, we're
Just yeah. I always like when we were snowbirding. There were certain days where it would be the same temperature in Minnesota as it was in Phoenix. In a date where if you were traveling down here, you're like, I'm getting screwed. It's not as nice and clean as it should be, and it's beautiful back in Minnesota. So anyway, today's not one of those days. Well, I think it's been a decent fall in
not
Minnesota.
too bad.
Yeah. Well, hey, today on Unscripted, we're going to talk about a concept I think almost every man over 50, and probably man under 50 can relate to. And it's this whole idea of overthinking and underacting. And so I want to dive into that topic with Brock. I'm going to pull up my notes here. Even though this is unscripted, we do use notes occasionally, so we have somewhat of an act together. So a little bit of context. When I look at the men in Argent Alpha, I mean, they tend to be successful guys. They've built careers, they've built families, they've overcome setbacks. There's going to be guys who have started businesses, run businesses, been key players, high performing salespeople. We've got a guy who planted a church and grew it from scratch. I mean, there's success is a common theme. But what we find is that a lot of guys, when they get in their 50s, their bias for action tends to take a hit. They tend to get conservative, and they tend to drift into if either not setting goals at all, or they have a bias for what are called avoid goals versus approach goals. And we'll come back and talk about that concept later. So one of the themes we want you to take out of this is you've got this in you. You've got this bias for action in your DNA. You've proven it over the decades. We're just going to try to wake it up with some of the topics we talk about. So before we get into some of the details, anything you want to add to that, Brock? Just add some color.
My mind automatically goes to perfectionism. Like people have to when they get locked up or don't know where to start or they just can't get going, everything's got to be perfect before they get going, before they get started. And I think James Clear says it best. I know both you and I, Jag, kind of action a lot of our business based on his principles of start small so you could be consistent. And it's like a lot of times when you're starting out a habit, it doesn't always, you don't go 7 out of 7 days in that week. There's days or there's weeks where you get 2 or 3 or 4, but you get the ball moving at least. And then you at least know what to kind of tie on to get, hey, I'm going to get 6 or 7 or 7 next week. But that perfectionism where it's got to be just absolutely pristine and perfect before you get going, it just locks people up.
Yeah, yeah, and then you get into this all or nothing. If I can't do it at this level, I'm not going to do it, which we know is a the perfection is really just a procrastination tactic.
Mhm.
It's a way to not just deal with it. Because let's face it, everybody's got the intellectual capacity to realize they aren't going to achieve perfection, but they use that as a crutch to avoid getting real feedback. And I remember like when you're a kid, when you're doing something with your buddies, you're like maybe 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, and you lose at something, what would you say? Like, well, I wasn't even trying. It's that kind of thing. And your kids are right in that age where you probably hear that, like when your boys are going at it, if one loses, it's of course you aren't trying.
Every time.
Yeah. And I think this is just the adult version of that. It's I'd rather not try and cling to the belief that I could do it versus actually just get out, start messy, start ugly, and making stuff happen. So yeah, it's definitely a thing. Let's talk about just this. Let's go a little bit into that overthinking part. One of the things, I mean, I've been victim of this myself. It manifests itself in either yes, I'm going to do it. It's just not going to be today. It's going to be Monday if it's on a Friday. It's going to be the next round number. So like right now it's November 4th. That'll be December 1st. It won't be, there's something magical in the perfectionist overthinker's mind about starting some date in the future to give you time to prepare. And then you don't prepare. And so a lot this time of year, November 4th, it's going to be January 1st for a lot of guys.
Hmm.
And the obstacles that they're going to manufacture are going to be holidays and travel, um, the cakes and pies and desserts and Thanksgiving and the alcohol. And so I think that's another thing. And the another thing that we all do, and talking about myself, is I need more gear. I need to get the Lululemon shorts. I need the Aura ring. I need the app. I need to join that membership in the gym. I need to find the trainer. He's busy, not taking clients till next month. I mean, just this continuous manufacturing of things you need, and then you will start. I'm
Hmm.
guessing you've seen this with your training clients.
Oh my gosh, too many times to even count. A cue that I listen to is if the description is just like instead of a one sentence or a couple, like this is the reason why, if it becomes a paragraph or a book, it's just like you're one, you're overthinking it, and two, you're just like looking for any excuse to kick it down the road a little bit. So if there is something that's legitimate or that is your reason why you're starting, you know, 2 weeks from now or instead of right today, you've thought about that and you've planned it, but like if it's just because of this and this and this and this and this and this, and it's just like it almost like gives like I almost have to sit down and take a couple like go into my breathing routine when I'm listening to people sometimes talk through it because it's like you're getting me overwhelmed. This you're overthinking
Yeah. Yeah. And I heard this line somewhere. I don't know where it was, but it was overthinking is fear dressed as responsibility.
it.
You have to be responsible. So you got to do all this research and thinking. And it's really, the reality is we're all equipped to take action. So anyways, the overthinking trap, that's one huge thing. I want to segue into another thing I read recently. And I'd heard of these components, but I like this guy called it the confidence loop. And so it was in respect to talking about limiting beliefs. And so he says, you cannot think your way out of a limiting belief. All you do by thinking about your limiting beliefs is probably cement them even more. He said the whole cure to erasing a limiting belief or raising it is take action. Action leads to results. Results builds confidence, and confidence erases that limiting belief. And then that's just a loop. And so,
When you say that, Jag, like the where my mind goes of like, okay, how do we actionably do that? What is that limiting belief? Actually write it down. And then from there, one of my cues or the thing I work on with clients too is just like ask some questions. Ask questions based on that limiting belief. Or what would be different that would put you into more of what we talked about last week and the weeks before of that hero or the guide role instead of the victim villain piece, which, asking yourself better questions.
mhm. Well, I'll give one. I heard from a guy. His limiting belief was it was a genetics based one, and it was people in our family have never had strong lower bodies, and this was prior to an in body scan that he was going to take, and I just looked at him and I said, "You really believe that bullshit?" And he started thought about it. I don't think he'd ever actually thought about it. It was just a story that was on rewind. It was just on a loop that he'd been telling himself. And when I thought, like, I asked, like, hey, if you lift weights progressively with progressive overload, if you eat nutrition the way we guide you to, if you rest and recover and hydrate, and then to top it off, if you believe you're capable of improving, I guarantee you're going to add muscle mass. I mean,
Yeah. What does your family's leg day routine look like the past few generations? Oh, we haven't had one. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's funny. So I think one of the things when you're examining your own limiting beliefs, you can get out a sheet of paper, draw a line down the middle, on the left side write down the limiting belief, and then the right side in the column put down why, and just start challenging it. And you might have to go, maybe you only have to go one level deep on the why, but you keep going to second level. So why you just nailed it. Yeah, that would disarm him immediately. Like, oh yeah, I guess we don't have leg day in our family, and that's why we're this way. It would just crush the limiting belief out of the gate. But if it's like a limiting belief is I can't lose fat because my wife cooks a certain way. Okay, well, so why do you believe that that's causing your weight problem because she makes pasta and pizza. It's like, well, how much do you eat of it? And you quickly get to like maybe it's a portion issue and not a specific food item. That might be part of the problem too. But you just keep asking why, and guys will all of a sudden, I think they'll have this moment of clarity and they'll go, yeah, maybe it's not a limiting, maybe it is a limiting belief, but I can overcome it. I have to reframe how I think about it. How do you approach reframing? Or what are some of the examples maybe you've seen with clients where the reframe was the breakthrough on a limiting belief?
Uh, Trying to think of some examples right now. It's just I've gotten to the point right now where instead of just trying to push back on somebody, or just like, oh, like look at the reframe. Like, my ADHD doesn't allow me to do that. Okay, well, I have a ton of clients who have ADHD. You know what I've found that have worked really well for them is technology. Technology, use it to your advantage. You know, set reminders, like schedule the same thing on this at the same point each day. You know, or habit stack. Like, hey, after I get done walking the dog, I'm gonna go right into my workout, or that's when I start cooking for lunch or whatever it is there. You know, just ask them some different questions around that to just try to disarm it. I mean, for me, a lot of times I'll just be like, write it down. If you get it out of here, where up here, you're looking at it through your own perspective. If you write it down, you'll see it and you'll probably find a way to work around that or talk it through with somebody. You know, anytime that you're getting it out of your head and talking it through and then having someone to hold you accountable. I mean, that's the 95% success ratio right there, right? Write it down, write it down and talk about it, write it down, talk about it, and have someone keep you accountable. I mean, that brings you right through that reframe instead of just like trying to do it on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, a breakthrough was, I didn't take up golf till I think it was 35 or 36 and never golfed, never even held a golf club. And so I took lessons from a pro and learned some of the nomenclature and here are the clubs. I mean, I literally didn't know. I knew a putter. That was the only thing I knew because you did that in mini golf. That was the only one I knew. So I learned the clubs, and then I loved the driving range and the putting green, but I did not want to get on the course. And the pro finally said, "We're going out," and so he put me in this foursome with three other guys, and it's like that just broke the ice of like, okay, you can't just practice golf for the rest of your life. You've got to go out and play. So that was a breakthrough. And so then I learned how to golf and I broke 100 and, not very often. And I measured my game by number of golf balls I started with versus ended with. And if I still had golf balls and didn't have to borrow any, that was a win. But anyways, I was out golfing once with one of our members, Greek. And, we were playing and I wasn't playing well and I was getting mad. And he just goes, Jag, you're not good enough to get mad. And I thought like, God, he's so right. It's like, you got to earn it, man. It takes practice and repetition. And so that was a reframe to me to go like, man, at that time I probably had been golfing like 6 months. I thought like I was in the gap the whole time because I was comparing to other guys my age and they were all in the 80s. Some were scratch golfers. And so that was a reframe Greek gave me that's like, oh, so when you're trying to start something new as a man over 50, do that reframe. I mean, this stuff takes a little practice. It takes time. It takes reps to shift these limiting beliefs and to establish new patterns and to shift that identity. And so when you think about pattern interrupts, I didn't have this language back then, but I was constantly in the gap and playing the combination of the villain and the victim. Now it'd be like, hey, what's the hero say? Like, hey, I'm just happy to be on the course. I know how to golf now. Whether I'm good or not doesn't even matter. Am I having a good time? Spending time with guys? I'm outdoors.
Mhm.
Completely reframed it. And so, anyway, that's a
One that I see oftentimes, Jig, is when I bring somebody through an in-body scan. And so we're looking at the in-body scan, they're just like, okay, I got whether it's a high amount of body fat, or so we want to be able to bring that body fat percentage down, or we want to be able to add skeletal muscle mass, like get people stronger. Like, well, what do I do to do that? Well, I know I obviously got to start lifting, but well, it's more than that. It's fueling yourself, making sure you have the right amount of protein. How much protein do you eat now? 50 grams of protein. Okay, well, your ideal body weight's 180 grams. Like over time, we don't even say how long it takes to get there. Ideally, we're going to have you try to work up towards 180 grams. They're just like, I've never eaten protein, or I'll never be able to eat that much. I think I have heard that almost on 100% of the initial body scans I've done with people is like, I'll never be able to do that. And it's just like, well, you don't have to go all the way to that. I mean, think about what we said about like that perfectionism. I got to go from 50 to 180 today.
Yeah.
No, bring it back down. Like you might be at 50 now. What if, I mean, could you get 75 every day this week? Yeah, probably. Okay. Well, then your body starts, adapting to that. You start adding on muscle. All of a sudden, your hunger cues like, hey, I'm hungry. Okay, it's probably time to add a little bit more protein in there and go from 75 to 100 or whatever that case is. The next thing you know, a month or two down the road, you probably could be to that 180. But if you think you have to be there right from the start, that is a perfect example of you're probably not going to, and it's probably not healthy to go right from 50 to 180 in most cases. There's a stair stepper mode to help you get you there.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm glad you brought that up because I think when we first started Argent Alpha, I was just focused on the end goal. I want to get to 15% body fat. The guys who were the original, the OGs, same thing. And if we would have said, who goes to pro status immediately? It's like nobody. There's a journey there. So break it down to milestones. And so the marathon analogy is a great way. You don't think about the 26.2 or whatever miles it is. You think about the next mile marker. And then you're celebrating that 26, hair over 26 times in a race. And I think it's the same thing with body comp, moving your protein up, increasing your hydration. Same thing with backing off of things. For a lot of guys, that's alcohol. So, I mean, I ran into a guy, he's not a member, but he was at a place where we were doing some regenerative medicine stuff, some ozone therapy. And I was talking to him, and he'd lost like 40 pounds. And I said, "Do you drink?" He goes, "Oh yeah, I drink, at least 6 beers a night." I was like, "What, 6 beers a night?" He goes, "Yeah, but that's down." He said, "That's down from 12." And so it's all
Hello.
it's all relative. It's like, okay, awesome. That gave perspective to it. Like the absolutes can get you in trouble. And so looking at that relative movement in your journey. So you're right. I think a lot of guys come in, the ones who track and maybe they track week one to kind of get a baseline. Seems like around 100 grams, 90 to 120, somewhere in there is where they land. And we're telling them get to 170 to 200, somewhere in that range. And they try to do that day one. So now we've upgraded our guidance. It's like, hey, maybe it's 10 grams a week. You're going to increase it. Maybe it's 10 ounces of water a week. And all of a sudden, after say 10 weeks, some guys can go faster, but there's not a rush. It's so having a milestone driven approach helps you get out of that overthinking mode and stay in the action mode. So that's a great point. Have you seen that with other things? I mean, there's protein, hydration. I think skeletal muscle mass is another one. Like guys
Mhm.
are in a hurry. Maybe if you haven't been to a gym for years, that month one scan, you put on, pound or two of muscle and you're like, oh man, this is easy. It's like, adding
My
muscle.
mind out always goes to James Clear's quote of you don't rise to the level of your goals. So just because you say you're going to get there doesn't put you there. You fall to the level of your systems, what you're able to do consistently. Like that, it always frames it up for me. So it's like, okay, well, we're going to drop 20% body fat in a year. I mean, it could be done, but I mean, the odds are severely against you. What if we, bring that down to a more, let's look at what we could get to this month. Are you in it for the long haul? Because that's like saying, hey, I know I'm fresh out of college, coming in as the internship. I'm going to be CEO next year or 2 years from now. It's like, no, you're not. But you set those same kind of irresponsible or unrealistic goals. Like a lot of it comes down to what you're setting that goal on, and is it realistic? And can you do it repeatedly? What are we talked about a few weeks ago? What are your default standards? If you're setting your default standards are here and your expectations are here, I mean that's a massive gap that I mean, your failure lies right in there, right? Like being able to bring this up a little bit over time is what's going to be able to help you with that.
Yeah, and I remember Daniel Pink used this example. It was an example with his daughter, but rather it was about cleaning her room. And the net of the whole story was, rather than getting on her for her room not being clean enough, he just asked her, "Hey, what's the least you could do?" And
Mhm.
just completely reframed her. And she said, "Well, I guess I can make my bed every day as a minimum." He's like, "Are you sure? Is that the least you can do?" And she's like, "Yeah, I can do that." I think it's the same thing with when we're working with our guys is start with what's the least you can commit to. And that non what is non-negotiable for you that you know you won't fail on, and then build from there. And I think that it gives guys that confidence and momentum they need to just get started. So like, hey, I never lifted weights in my life. Great, no problem. You educate them a little bit on you don't need to go and put a barbell on your back day one. You might just be completely doing body weight. Could you start with one push up in a day? Yeah, well, is that the least you could do? They might go, oh no, I could do two sets of 10 or whatever they come back with. Now it's coming from them. It's manageable. They're kind of going, yeah, I could do that. And then you apply that to
Mhm.
everything. What's the least amount of water you could drink and hit a standard that you're happy with? So what's the least you can do is another reframe because they're expecting guys like you to come back with this huge, how am I going to get there sort of thing, and you're like just completely disarming them with like, wow, I can actually answer that question, you know?
I've heard that line before. I just wrote it down. This will be one of my go-tos now because I love that Daniel Pink, like what's the least you could do? That's so powerful.
Yeah,
It helps you like, yeah, I could easily do that. Well, is that the least you could do? Yeah. I could actually probably do a little bit more. And it helps you. That's a perfect reframe.
yeah. Hey, let's talk just quickly because I know we're going to wrap up here in a second, but we talk about avoid goals and approach goals. And avoid goals are they're things you don't want to have happen. So a common one, I don't want to get hurt. That's a common response to men have when we tell them strength training should be at the centerpiece of your training. Another one is I don't want to turn out like my parents. You know, and so many guys like my age, their parents have suffered from cognitive decline. They spent the last 20% at least of their life declining in constant interaction with the healthcare system or the sick care system. So guys don't want that. It's like me either, man. But it's not very motivating. It doesn't have any magnetic pull. So there's a place for avoid goals, but what we advocate is approach goals. So what are you approaching? What do you want to have happen? So tell me less about what you don't want to have happen, but tell me what you do want to have happen. And I like a 80-20 split. So 80% of whatever you're working on should be approach oriented. 20% are avoid goals. Those are a little bit of the guardrails. But I don't know if you've used that with your clients, but talk a little bit about how you're this whole balance, or not even balance, but this sort of this we're predisposed to lean towards avoid goals versus approach goals where we're going for it and setting new limits to where we can go.
This happens every day when we're trying to decide with my kids what we're going to have for dinner. I only get what they don't want. It's like, okay, well, what do you want? Let's start there. No, um, the avoid goals is almost every time I have a onboarding call with somebody or we're trying to frame up what it is. It's just like it's the things that they don't want that they focus on. So trying to find what some of those things are that they do want, and it's like a lot of times you got to kind of lead them there. Like I think for me, my mind always goes to some of the actionable things that we focus on. Hydration. What do you have now? What do you want to have? What's our goal? That would be a good one. Or exercise. Where are you at now? Where do you want to be? Nutrition. Where are you at now? Where do you want to be? Like, and then helping them kind of see where that gap is. Like, I mean, you kind of one by one in the things that we focus on in our daily actions, you're able to help lead them towards, what the more of those approach goals. And then from there, if you're zooming out a little bit, okay, well, what does that look like in a month, in a quarter, in a year? And then tying it to what does that look like in your future self? What does that future self look like 6 months from now, a year from now? And I kind of went backwards from what I normally do, but those are ways that I think about helping people see set those avoid goals, because I do get a lot of those right from the start when I'm working with people and think about more. Okay, well, what do we want to focus on?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. The language matters so much, and avoid goals are inherently negative. They're what you don't want, what you're avoiding. And I mean, the classic line that really sums this up for me. It goes something like this: Mother Teresa said, "I'd never be part of an anti-war rally, but I would go to a pro-peace rally."
Mhm.
And you look at the words pro-peace, both positive, anti-war, both negatives. And so it's a completely different way to think about it. So when you say, I don't want to get hurt, great. The reframe of that would be, I want to be strong and healthy, functional, independent, mobile, and dangerous. I want to be dangerous. What does that mean? Well, by solving for that, you automatically, or you pretty much automatically address the risk you're talking about.
Mhm.
Now you can lift weights recklessly. You can do anything recklessly. We're not advocating recklessness. We're just saying when you focus on the positive part of it, the approach part, you probably are gonna you can embed the avoidance part, like strength training with mobility dramatically reduces the risk of injury. So you're already catching on that avoid thing without having to use negative language patterns to
Mhm.
talk about it. And I guarantee
Yeah.
you, the guys who talk about not getting hurt are the guys most likely to get hurt.
Every time, because I mean, ask them that. Well, what do you got to do to not get hurt? And they probably don't know the answer to that. Those are going back to what we started talking about. Like, ask yourself some better questions. Those questions, like, what do I got to do to not get hurt? Well, I probably got to do some daily mobility and stretching. Probably got to make sure I'm warmed up before I start lifting. You got to make sure I stay within my means of what I should be lifting with proper form. It's like, I don't want to die. Okay, well, what do you got to do to like help bulletproof yourself or make you as bulletproof as you can to not die? Well, probably got to get some good rest. Got to eat right. You got to do some. Well, yeah, okay. Well, within each one of those things, it's pretty easy to reframe that.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think it kind of wrap this up and tie it all together. I like to always go back to the role we're playing. And so when you're in this sort of avoid mode and overthinking mode and limiting belief mode, you're in the victim villain mindset, the victim villain role. And so if you're in that, you just now you've got some tools now to help spot it, do the pattern interrupt and go, okay, what would the hero do? The hero's going to take ownership. They're going to reframe it positively. They're focused on what's the least they could do. And when you just make that shift, all the things you need to do start to fall into place. Maybe not overnight, but they start. And that's where that something's better than nothing. What's the least you can do? All these little mantras we have internally that you probably hear us, if you're listening to this podcast regularly, we lean back on because they're all true. So the reframe, the pattern interrupt, choose the right role, language matters. We're not just
AAA
positive.
framework.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so um, let's see. Yeah. So overthinking, do just the minimum viable amount of thinking and then take massive action. Just get into it. And massive doesn't mean crushing yourself. It just means step into the arena, get out of the stands, get in the arena, start making something happen. And ask yourself as you go on your week now, what's the least you could do to make some kind of deposit in your future self? And when you start doing that, you create some positive momentum.
Hmm.
So anyway, Clint, hope you're enjoying Phoenix. If you're listening to this, we'll have him back hopefully next week. Brock, what's on deck for you the rest of the day?
I'm going to get a workout in right now, and then we got a bunch of stuff planned out with the kids. Got gymnastics and hockey, and all the activities. So it's still nice here, fall weather in Minnesota. So we're going to spend some time outside.
Awesome. I'm off to go do some zone two cardio and might involve weight on my back with a little rucking.
Heck yeah.
I was doing a little training yesterday for our fitness standards this week with the farmer carry, and farmer carry is just awesome, man. So I know that's a whole other topic, but if you guys ever want to go do something that's good for you, go pick up two weights, put one in each hand, go walking with that. It's a little different than rucking with weight on your back. It just builds grip strength. You'll get your heart rate jacked up a little bit, and
Mm,
it feels good. So I'm off to go do a little bit of that. So I
that sounds
will.
perfect.
I'll see you next week.
All right, sounds good. Clint, you're a legend.
Yep. Thanks, you guys. See ya.